Hey guys, Level Cap here. Today we're going to talk about a bunch of updates and generally the state of the game with PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. It's been growing at an insane speed right now. We're rushing towards the Gamescom tournament in which there will be a $350,000 cash prize, which is absolutely insane. And the new Gamescom high value items have hit the Steam marketplace and are selling for over $400 in certain cases. It's absolutely insane. This game is going nuts right now, and I want to talk about it. First of all, we have the early access week 20 update. These weekly updates are usually much smaller than the monthly updates. The big things to note here are that the game should be optimized now for 6-core CPUs or higher, which is good. And then they've also worked on the UI to hopefully optimize that a bit more. And then they've made a few graphical changes and bug fixes and stuff like that that are fairly minor. I'll link the patch notes in the video description if you want to read through each detail. Now, first-person mode has been out long enough to really put it through its paces. And although there are some funny little scaling issues here and there, and obviously the game has a long way to go before it's fully polished and finished, I think first-person mode is already doing great. It's off to a great start, and I hope that they implement the squads version of first-person perspective soon. In fact, it's been a little bit divisive, especially with the groups of people that I play with, because a lot of us don't want to go back to playing third-person mode, and since we can't play squads in first-person mode, we've just stopped playing squads. So hopefully the devs will add the squad mode to first-person perspective in the near future. It's really difficult to try and figure out a reason as to why they held back the squads on first-person perspective at the moment, because it just seems like something that would be simple to implement considering they've already done it for solo and duos. Now, as far as the rest of the game goes, it's hard to say how much the devs are going to change the base game layout. We do know that they're working on 2 new maps and that we're probably not going to see them for at least 2 more months. They said there's quite a bit that goes into each of these maps, and so they're not going to release them before they're finished, and that's probably several months away, unfortunately. I think this game could really use some new maps. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love playing PUBG and I love playing on the map right now, but some map variety would certainly be very welcome, and I'd mostly be interested to see in how it changes up the gameplay, because map layout, building complexity, or environmental layout really does dictate like your strategies, and so having different maps with entirely different strategies on how to play would be a welcome change. The devs also haven't really talked about game pacing much recently. I know early on that they were talking about like kind of messing with the circle properties a bit more and changing the pacing a bit and whatnot, but they haven't been specific really with what they want to change with that. We just kind of know that they've potentially messing around with stuff behind the scenes, and maybe in the future we'll see some changes. They did mention that the next big monthly patch will focus on grenade mechanics. They didn't really specify what they're changing about grenade mechanics, but I imagine they're just going to try and make it a little bit easier to use grenades or something. Who knows? A while back we were teased with some weapon gameplay showing off what appeared to be an RPK in-game. We have not yet seen this rifle added to the game. However, we do have a Groza and a Mark 14 now. Unfortunately, both weapons are limited to the supply drop, and I've seen the Groza maybe a few times in game, and then the Mark 14 I've never actually used in a match. And I was talking to a few other players who put in serious hours to this game who have also never used the Mark 14. And so I hope that down the line PUBG starts adding in more weapons to the standard loot pile as opposed to supply drop crates. It's been one of my issues with the supply drop mechanic in this game, is half the time the supply drops are giving you weapons that you don't want in the first place. And I think most people just go for the supply drops because it's fun as opposed to strategic. I have noticed, and I was talking about this with a few players the other day, that once you've put in a lot of time to PUBG and you've gotten comfortable with getting chicken dinners and learning how to win the game strategically, the strategic elements of this game become something that kind of takes second place to having fun with the game, and having fun often goes in an opposite direction of your strategic options, if that makes sense. So rushing for supply drops, dropping into really heavily contested areas of the map at the start, those are fun things to do in PUBG, but they certainly don't increase your chances of winning. And this is an interesting design concept in that I think the best games out there are the ones that allow the most strategic and the best gameplay to also end up being the most fun gameplay. And I think PUBG is sort of dividing those gameplay philosophies a little bit here, because the most strategic gameplay would be to mostly just avoid combat and contact with other players for most of the round. Even if you're a great player and you think you can kill most of the people you run into, generally speaking, it's still a better strategy to try and avoid combat to get to the very end of the round to increase your odds of actually winning. Unfortunately, that strategy is also very, very boring. So I think PUBG could certainly take a look at these ideas and maybe try and refine their game a bit more and create incentives to engage or fight other players a bit more rather than just camp all around. I do think it is still an issue that we see commonly in PUBG servers, and that mid-game is still possibly the most boring part of this game, in which you see very limited combat. Now, when it comes to this big Gamescom event and the upcoming $350,000 tournament, I think everybody's excited, but also maybe excited for the wrong reasons. Personally, I've seen so many bugs in this game that I anticipate a $350,000 tournament going off right now. There's gonna be some problems. People will die for weird reasons or unjust reasons, and you can only imagine that if you were a player in a tournament in which 350K was on the line and you died to some stupid game bug or something weird and laggy happened or your computer crashed, you'd be pretty darn upset. I think the game is far from ready for a professional tournament scene, especially one with a huge amount of money on the line. At the same time, I'm excited to watch because, I mean, if stuff blows up, well, it'll make for good entertainment regardless. Now, when it comes to the loot crate system surrounding the Gamescom event, we've had several days to sort of explore this new system and try and figure it out. What I've noticed is that the common items are incredibly common. A $2.50 key gets you, on average, just about nothing. And the items that are incredibly rare are now going up on the Steam Marketplace for hundreds and hundreds of dollars. Now, of course, the only people to blame for these astronomically high prices in-game are the players themselves. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately for game developers, there's just a lot of people out there with a huge amount of disposable income who can afford to pay $400 for a miniskirt in-game. Mind you, not some sort of like glowing golden miniskirt or something crazy like that, just a simple looking kind of purplish pink miniskirt. And it's going for $400. I mean, it's absolutely insane. And I think the Steam Marketplace, although is probably being very successful in terms of generating revenue for PUBG, is also very exclusive and limiting to basic players who don't want to spend a huge amount of money on the system. I have already spent, like, I would say maybe $40 on crates and keys and stuff right now, testing out the system, and my rewards for it have been slim to none. Very, very weak items. I mean, in terms of the amount of money I spent in game, if you compare it to other shooter games out there or other games with loot crate systems, you can get a hell of a lot more reward in just about any other title for the money you put into it. Definitely a controversial subject, and just to be clear, I'm not against microtransactions or paying money for cosmetic items in games. I just think the system that they have in right now is really set up to skyrocket prices and make things incredibly expensive and not particularly inclusive to newer players. I mean, if you take a look at, say, the Blizzard system for Overwatch or Hearthstone, where they don't allow trading in the Steam Marketplace, that means that you just got to buy more crates or open more packs or whatever to get the more rare cards and the cooler looking things. Sure, it can cost a bit of money, but at the end of the day, we're not looking at dollar prices that are associated with some of these PUBG items, and it sort of self-regulates the market without having a trading economy. With the trading economy, things have just gone insane, and it's unfortunate because, honestly, the cosmetic items in PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds really don't look that great, especially right now. They haven't come up with anything that looks particularly cool, yet people are spending an arm and a leg just for some basic gear. Sadly, I think the current system is going to end up being incredibly lucrative for PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, and so it won't really give the developers much of a reason to change the system very much. I can only hope that over time the system regulates itself a little bit more and people aren't spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars for single items in game. Taking a step back from the cosmetic side of things, it really doesn't matter too much as long as you're enjoying the gameplay. Still, right now, I think my top priority for the developers to focus on is still performance and netcode. I still get lots of laggy performance in game, huge frame drops, and people are often teleporting around and doing kind of weird things, especially towards the start of the round. So to continue pushing this game in a competitive direction, I think that should always be the #1 priority for the developers. As always, guys, thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this sort of update on PUBG, and I'll see you next time. This is LevelCap signing off.